Well, good afternoon. We are so happy that you're joining us today. We're waiting on a few more people to come in, but we're going to get started because I want to value your time. Welcome to the Bonhoeffer Project monthly webinar. And today we're talking about we're in this thing together. My name is Cindy Perkins. I get to serve as the executive director of the Bonhoeffer Project and love being part of this organization. And I'm excited to introduce to you today a couple who serves as our regional reps in North Georgia and North and South Carolina. Joye Waller and his wife, Joye, and they serve God together. And so one of the things that we want to talk about this month is how we do that, how we serve together in this place with our spouse or those around us, and how we make that happen. So welcome, Joye and Joye.
Thank you.
It's great to be here.
So let's start. Let's start with, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves?
All right, Joye, we'll let you go first.
Okay. Well, we're both from South Georgia. We've been married, oh goodness, about 30 plus years now. 3 young adult kids, great kids, great son-in-law, a future son-in-law on the way. Let's see what else interesting about us. Well, we both come from secular employment background. I was a physical therapist. Tony was in the IT field, living in Atlanta, kind of pursuing the American dream, and then, just also on a discipleship journey for us. So yeah, a little bit there. I think we've moved. I was thinking the other day, Tony, I think we've moved about 10 times in our, literally picking up and moving to a new location.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, about
quite
10
a few times
along this journey. Yeah, so moving has been part of it. We lived overseas. I lived in Georgia, South Carolina. We're currently now in Georgia, just south of Atlanta. So close enough to the big city, but far enough away we don't have the traffic.
Yeah. So you got to come home, basically, is what you got.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So I think for us, we've really enjoyed just meeting people along the journey, just meeting people, learning about their lives, their stories, meeting people in different cultures and learning different cultures. Yes, I'd say, Tony, would you agree that our family's kind of we like trying different ethnic foods? Our kids do too. I mean, we'll meet up in Atlanta sometimes at an ethnic restaurant because everybody lives in different locations. So we'll say, hey, let's meet up in Atlanta. We have a favorite restaurant there. It's Ethiopian, actually. So something a little bit different, but yeah.
And this is very different from me growing up in a very small town. We didn't go far. We didn't try new stuff. We had our routine and we didn't do much. And so God in his infinite humor moved us overseas. And so now we love different cultures, different people, meeting people, hearing their stories, sharing our stories. So God just works in crazy ways sometimes. So
he does indeed. And story is a big part of what we do. In discipleship, it's a big part of what we do in the kingdom. When we look at the stories that God gives us in the Bible, there's lessons to be learned in every story, right?
Yes,
that's true.
So tell us the story, Tony, of how you guys found the Bonhoeffer Project.
That is a great story because we recently had a chance to do a reflection on our spiritual journey, and of course, Bonhoeffer Project plays well into that. We lived overseas for about 10 years. And so about 2 years after coming back, I joined a church staff. And that was a time for us that we felt like God wanted us to come back from overseas, different culture. And we had reverse culture shock, so to speak, coming back to the U.S. and the church here. And so God wanted us to see a picture of his church. And so we went on a disciple-making journey to see how do we make disciple makers here in the American church. And so we read books and we read books. And one of those books was Bill Hull's book, Jesus Christ, Disciple Maker. And in that book, in the back, as I pulled it off of my shelf, there was a quote that I had written some notes there. And it said, one of Bill's quotes, there was a quote by Ian Bounds that he made. And then Bill comments on that. He says, precious few people are willing to invest their lives in others. We don't want to take the risk or the time to invest in the lives of people, even though this was a fundamental part of Jesus's ministry. And so that concept right there, I think has become a key for us, is that it takes time, but we want to invest in people like Jesus invested in people. And so again, reading Bill's book, and then I also, probably in about 2015, I heard Bill speak at a conference here in Georgia. And this is when the Bonhoeffer Project, I think, was still fairly new, and he was introducing it. And then as I began to learn more about Bonhoeffer Project, I found a video of Jim Thomas, who is on the national leadership team, and he is also from Georgia. And so I was looking up this guy that I had not met, named Jim Thomas, and I found out that he's at a church about 45 minutes from us, and one of his staff members is a friend of mine. And so I called up my friend and I asked him to set up a lunch meeting for us, and so I could meet Jim, and we had a great time. And if you've ever talked to Jim, he is passionate about disciple making and also the Bonhoeffer Project. So we had a great lunch, hit it off well. And then later there was a gathering of the Bonhoeffer Project in Tennessee, I think. And so we went up for that and got to meet some of the other staff there. And I had hoped to join a cohort led by Jim, but he wasn't leading one at the time. And so he recommended I join one of Bill Hull's cohorts, which I did. And as they say, that is the rest of the story. So I had a great time with that, got to connect with church leaders from around the country, and even a pastor down in Argentina. And so working through our projects, wrestling with these concepts of the gospel, what is a disciple of Jesus, that was really transformational in my life. And I think Joy's going to add some to that.
She is.
Yeah, because you know I have words, right, Tony?
Yeah. You have a story too. Come on.
Yeah, got words. Well, you know, when Tony told me, he said, and I didn't really know anything about the Bonhoeffer Project, because he's mulling it over, thinking on things. And he said, I really think we're supposed to go to this Bonhoeffer Project conference in Nashville. And it was in November of 2019. And I was like, for real? Like, you want to go to a conference, like another one? Like, we're good, right? No, he said, this is where we're supposed to be. And, you know, at this conference, it wasn't about the how-to or exactly what to do. No silver bullet, but walking with Jesus, knowing him and making him known. And the Bonhoeffer Project is about turning leaders into disciple makers. And as I heard the leadership team share, as we heard Bill Hull and some of the others on the leadership team and Cindy share, my heart just connected. I'll never forget, Cindy was on the stage sharing, and she made a statement that she says to some of her ladies. She'll ask them, how is God speaking to you? What's he saying to you through your time with him? And when she shared that, that really caught my attention, because I've only heard that from one or two other people in my lifetime. It is not, I have not found it to be a common part of connecting in churches, and a common part of disciple making in churches. So really connected there. And I knew, all right, God is doing something. There was a like-mindedness. He brought us together, stayed in contact with Cindy, and just continued those conversations, and then joined the cohort with her in 2020. So, you know, again, as Tony said, it's just kind of like, okay, that's the beginning, or that's the rest of the story. You can just fill it in. And yeah, we know God directed our steps and our paths on a disciple-making journey as we're seeking him, as we're following him. Step by step, he has revealed the next step. And the Bonhoeffer Project is such a key and integral part of our journey.
So the two of you stepped into two different cohorts at the same time, basically, right?
Correct.
So tell me, let's just have some conversation about what was that like to go through the project at the same time in different groups. Obviously, men's groups and women's groups are different. But how did that work for you guys? And did you find any difficulties? And what were like some of the pros and cons? What did you find good about that? So just talk to me about what you felt during those moments.
Since we had been overseas, we have ministered as a husband and wife team. Mm-hmm. And so for us, it was a really good, because prior to us joining the cohorts, we had implemented small disciple-making groups at our church. And so as we worked through our projects in the Bonhoeffer Project, we were able to look at what we were currently doing and make some tweaks and adjustments, and then also look at some areas that we had not thought through. For instance, we were looking at what does it mean to make disciple makers, but then to take that step back and go, let's go back and look, okay, what is the gospel? Because as Bill says, that if you get the gospel wrong, then everything after that is wrong. So really to go back and dig into what is the gospel? What is the gospel that Jesus taught? And then going into that next phase, what truly is a disciple of Jesus? So those were some great conversations for us to talk through, and even later afterwards had a chance to lead our staff through some of these same conversations about what is the gospel. Are we proclaiming the Jesus gospel, the gospel that we see in the New Testament?
Yes. And, just to add to that, I mean, I found that our cohorts, we were on the same timetable, but just the conversation between us and our learning went to the next level. Tony was meeting with men, and he's learning together with them. I'm meeting with women from around the country and learning together with them. And so we're learning in our individual spaces, but we're continuing this conversation throughout the month in our space together. And then it's impacting how we're walking and how we're just our observation and our engagement within the local body. And the conversations there that were taking place. So it was just multiple spaces and multiple levels in our lives at the same time.
So if you were going to recommend to a couple how to walk through the Bonhoeffer Project, do you think you would recommend that they try to be in the same cohort, or do you think they would recommend they do it the same way you did, each of you in a separate cohort, and then come together and talk through?
So that is a great question, Cindy, because I think it really depends on the couple. And to know, to consider, okay, what does ministering together look like for you? Are you in the same space at all, engaging the same couple? And this can be for paid staff, it can be for laity, it can be for whatever disciple making, whatever your context may be. So do you have space together where you're ministering together? And also I would say that for Tony and I, in our years of just along this journey, because it has been through years and ministering together, and we have different gifts, and we acknowledge each other's gifts, and we work so well, just give and take. He's head of our household. He is a spiritual leader. We both have voices. And so as we come to the table, we each have a voice, and we're each learning. So I would say that would be an important part of coming together in a couples cohort, is that you each have a voice, and you're each learning along this journey in disciple making. So I think that's a key part of it as well. I think could be a great benefit of doing it together. I think there could be benefit of, doing it simultaneously as well.
Tony, what do you
And
think? Oh, hold on. Go ahead.
I was just going to say too, and in planning for both of you to be in a cohort at the same time, make adjustments in your schedule.
Exactly.
Plan ahead of time. Ask God, okay, where do I need to make space for this? Not space to just, okay, get the work done, to do the reading and fill it in or just whatever, but really having that time for reflection. And so for both husband and wife to go through it, whether simultaneously in different cohorts or at the same time in a couples cohort, make sure you're giving each other, yourself and each other, that space.
I will echo what Joy said there, is that if the couple, I think either way though, I think going through it at the same time, whether you're in the cohort together or if you're in men's cohorts and women's cohorts, I think there is a value going through it together because you're learning together. For instance, in our disciple making groups, we will have a man go through a group and his wife hasn't been in the group, and so he's learning and being transformed. She's got all of these questions and she's wondering, okay, he's growing but I'm not, and then vice versa with the wife going through a group, but then he's not, and so there's all these questions, and so you're growing together. You're getting interactions from other people, but there's just something special about with your spouse learning these things, wrestling with these concepts, these topics together. So I think again, if it's going through one together, it's great. But again, if you're not ministering together a lot, then it might be better for a separate one. But again, going through at the same time.
I think there's such value in having a common language. And I think that's one of the pieces that happens in the Bonhoeffer project is you develop a language as you work through the project that you are in danger if your spouse is not engaged in some fashion. You're in danger of moving sideways or ahead or whatever direction you want to use to describe that. You're in danger of leaving them in a different place where they don't even have the language to talk with you about it, right?
Correct.
So when you guys are leading, you've talked about the small groups of people that you lead. And so when you are discipling couples, I'm certain you disciple couples because we've talked about that before. How does that work for you? Give us just a little bit of a window into what a couple being discipled by Tony and Joy would look like.
Great question. God brings to us regularly couples who are, whether they're really growing, they're strong in the faith, but they're wanting more, or if they're struggling in some way, they're newlyweds. It's just for us, I think one of the elements is asking great questions, finding out where they are. So getting a strong foundation for them, hearing their story. That's one element, but then also with our groups, we are very strong that we and they be in the Word together, because we know of so many group formats and things. You read lots of books, but you never read God's Word together. And so there's power in the Word, and so that's one of our things. Everything that we do, we want it to be centered on God's Word. Yes, we will read books, but we never forsake the reading of God's Word together.
I think that's really valuable. And that's one of the values that we have as the Bonhoeffer Project is rolling back upstream into the place of understanding the gospel through scripture. I think that brings us into that place of intimacy, because that is how we walk with God. Right.
And two, we led a small couples group. We had probably, would say about maybe 12 to 16 people in our small group. And it was great we would see men who had never owned a Bible would go out and buy a Bible. We would hear the wives talking about they're having spiritual conversations in their home. But getting people in the Word is powerful. Getting them praying together, and just being real. And too, I think that's the thing that we often don't have in church today, is spaces where people can be real. They can be vulnerable with each other. And so when that happens, transformation happens. And so we've seen it multiple times. And so those are just some of the elements of it for us.
And Cindy, I was going to share too, along the lines of engaging couples. It's really meeting people where they are, just like Jesus. Jesus' method, or his way, is meeting people where they were, hearing their stories, speaking to them in a way they can understand. And all of it's preceded by prayer. So as Tony mentioned, we engage people within the church, those who've walked with Jesus for years, who are hungry for more, but we also engage people outside going, maybe they're a seeker. Maybe they're saying something like, I don't know what I don't know, and I don't even know what to ask. But creating a space that it's okay to just be. Yeah, and we find that with couples, and people are hungry for this, for an opportunity to come together. And we see where the Bonhoeffer Project has helped us as in this way as being a disciple maker. Cindy, you mentioned a moment ago about going back to the why. As leaders, which I'm sure most people who are listening to this or participating, they're a leader in some capacity. And as leaders, we like to know, okay, tell us what works. Show me what to do here, and I'm going to take it and run with it. And what the Bonhoeffer, the discipleship flow process, which is what we work on within a cohort, what it does is we can stop and take that time to go, as Bill says, upstream, back to the why, which you mentioned. And, we may have tools that are working. We have tools that were working. We were seeing results. We were seeing some life transformation happen. But going back to the why and really beginning, taking that time to assess, what is, as we've talked about, what is the gospel? What is a disciple? What's really happening in our context? Is it reproducible? What are we leading? How are we leading our people? All of these things are so foundational. There is no perfect method, no perfect tool. Tony and I think we would both agree fully that along our journey, we adjust. We're assessing and adjusting and knowing the people that God has given us in each season of life to come along the journey.
Yeah, it's really important. And I think it's important for us to understand as couples, or sometimes we're walking through this with friends, right? So there's that piece as well. But to engage in those places of being able to have those, you mentioned vulnerability, those deep, intimate conversations that when we go back to Genesis and look, that was the relationship that God had with Adam and Eve.
Yes.
Was that deep intimacy where they heard him coming and they knew they were going to fellowship with him. And so understanding that when we go back to the why do we disciple, right? Why do we do that? Is it just because Jesus said so? But no, there's so very much more. And that's part of what we walk through in the Bonhoeffer Project. In the first couple of months, we're just really deconstructing the destructive teaching that we've had. All of us have had some junk taught to us, right? And so I think that was one of the things my husband has, because I've been in this place for a long time. He's not been through a cohort, but because I've been in this place a long time, we've had these discussions now. But in the beginning, it was like he didn't have the context from which I was looking at things. And so he's, what do you mean you have to deconstruct the gospel? And until we could have those deeper conversations and understand that, it really put us in a place of not necessarily understanding one another when we would have spiritual conversations in our homes. So I think it's important. I think it's important for us to be intentional. If you are married and you're not walking through any learning process with your spouse, you've got to make sure that you bring them along in a certain way.
Yeah.
In my mind, there's nothing more important or sweet or powerful than a couple coming together, because scripture is real clear about the two of us become one, right? And there's strength in that union when we become one flesh. And so understanding the strength that God uses, it really doubles, because I am of the bent that women should disciple women and men should disciple men. And I know everybody doesn't believe that, and that's okay. I just have found in my life that works so much better. But if you've got a couple that you want to engage, and you can each have those spaces, but then come together in those common places, I think there's just real power in that, right? Real power.
There is.
So what are you guys excited about for your future with the Bonhoeffer Project and all God is doing in that space? I know Joy and I talk on a more regular basis, which is why I wanted to bring her on, because I wanted you guys to hear what's going on with Tony and Joy. God's just doing some neat stuff. So what are you excited about? Joy, you want to start?
Sure. Well, I'm currently in a cohort with Cindy. I'm assisting. And then I'm also in another online cohort. And both of those are going to be wrapping up soon. For me, it has just been pure joy to come alongside women and just to see God working in their lives, to be with people as they go through this transformational process and coming to a discipleship flow process for their context. Just the learning that takes place. So these are wrapping up. So I'm excited to continue meeting people and having these conversations, hearing people's stories. Come along beside them. I'm looking forward to potentially starting a ladies cohort in the fall. Tony and I are also always open for a couples cohort for those who might be interested. So I'm looking forward to that. And you know, if you're listening to this and you think, okay, I'm curious, I'd like to know more, you know, reach out. I know I, for myself, for one, and Cindy, Crystal, others would love to talk with you. And, you know, whether we meet over Zoom with a cup of coffee or meet in person, whatever it might look like, and just to hear your story and to see where you are on the journey. You know, there's a favorite book of mine that I recommend to people, even if you're not a reader. It's a real short read, but it's Robert Coleman's The Master Plan of Evangelism. It's been around since the early 60s. And early in this book, the author makes a statement. He says that Jesus wasn't concerned with programs to reach the multitude, but with men who the multitudes would follow. And the Bonhoeffer Project is all about just that, turning leaders into disciple makers, equipping, strengthening the body, and fulfilling God's great commission, the commission of being on mission with Jesus. And so, you know, with this process, what makes me so excited is seeing the life change and knowing, okay, the people that I might touch, they're going to touch others who will touch others. And I don't have to see it all. I don't have to know it all. I can just trust that God's working. And, you know, coming through the Bonhoeffer Project, I get so excited because you don't have to wonder if you're making disciples. You don't have to hope you are. You will know that you are.
Yep.
And walk forward in that confidence.
Yep. Tony, what are you excited about?
One of the things for me is that I have had so many great conversations with church leaders. They can be pastors or lay leaders or whatever, but those that I know we often talk about the state of the church today and how things aren't going well, but we know that God is stirring hearts. And so recent conversation with a church leader like me, he had read one of Bill's books, and he reached out to find more about the Bonhoeffer Project. And so I called him up, and one of the first things he said is that he wants to raise the bar for what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. And this pastor, he is involved in his church, but also he is involved with other pastors of other churches in his city. And so his vision is to see multiple church leaders from multiple churches in his city go through a cohort. So that way, what that does is that puts them all on the same page, and they are working in the same direction. So they are, and then their vision is to see their city become a city of disciple makers. And so to me, seeing those kind of things happen is what's powerful, because God is stirring, and then being able to take these men and these women that God is working in their hearts, and then leading them through a process is just powerful and exciting to me.
That is exciting. I want to stop for a minute, take some questions if our audience has any questions. And if not, then I'm going to come back and we'll talk through a little bit of what's upcoming for the Bonhoeffer Project and for you guys, and let people know how they can get connected. So do you guys have any questions? John, Neil? Nope, maybe no questions. All right. So I know that we'll put this out so that others can see it, others can engage. And we had some folks who were going to join us today and couldn't. So we want to make sure that they get a copy of this. But I want to just give you a little bit of an overview of what God is doing in the Bonhoeffer Project. Tony and Joy, like I said, are regional representatives for the Bonhoeffer Project, and we are gaining a foothold in many more states in the U.S. John is actually getting ready to start a group in Minnesota soon, so I'm excited about that. God's going to do some neat work there. But in addition to what we're doing in the States, we are moving into multiple countries throughout the world. We have leaders on the ground in Argentina and Cameroon. We're looking at Brazil. We've got some folks starting a cohort from Brazil pretty soon. We've got some folks from South Korea in a cohort, one from Russia who's going to be starting a work there. And just on and on. God continues to weekly. We may have some folks in Italy soon that'll be engaging. And so God is doing an amazing work in this place. And if you're watching, like Joy said, if you're watching and you want more information, Crystal, would you put up the info at the Bonhoeffer Project? You can just email. The info emails come to me, and I would then send it. If you wanted to talk to Joy or Tony, you could just put that in there. But theirs is also Joye, Joye, at the Bonhoeffer Project, and Tony is Tony at the Bonhoeffer Project. So feel free to reach out to them. Our next event coming is in November, and I am so excited. We have been apart from one another so long. And we get to come together in person. I'm praying really, really hard that this latest COVID outbreak is done soon so that we can move into the fall without worrying about people coming together. But we're going to be meeting the first week of November in Nashville. So it's a beautiful time in Nashville. Those of us who are currently in Florida, Crystal said you can tell it's really warm in Florida because we don't do sleeveless often, but here we are. It's hot today. Heat index of about 106 where I sit. So warm, but Nashville is beautiful in November. We're going to meet up on Wednesday, November the 3rd. Thank you, Crystal. I'm like, I get my days mixed up. We're going to meet up on Wednesday, November the 3rd as the Bonhoeffer Project group. We've got some fun things planned for that day. It's going to be a great day. And you can register for that on our website. And then on Thursday and Friday, most of us are planning to stay and join the discipleship.org disciple making forum, where Bobby Harrington and crew and there's about 20 disciple making organizations that'll be there. Just an exciting time for everybody who is a discipleship first thinking person to come together and just celebrate what God's doing in our disciple making world and learn from one another. Just a great time on that Thursday and Friday. So you can register at discipleship.org for that. We also are part of a discipleship.org collective. And so the month of August, the Bonhoeffer Project gets to do the collective shows. So if you're watching this before August comes, you can pull that in. If not, you can go back and watch the ones that they've posted. But we're just excited to be part of something that's bigger than us, right?
Yeah.
And we've got a number of groups that are starting here coming up in August. I think Tony is hoping to work with one of our guys in Georgia, Aaron Holtz, who is getting ready to start a group in August. And so Tony's
looking at mid-August.
Mid-August, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're interested in that, you can drop in info and just put Tony's name in there and we'll get it. Tony will give you a call. And then Joy, like she says, she's hoping to start a group in early fall, September, mid to late September, probably after Labor Day. And so a women's group. So if you're a woman and interested in that, we also have other groups beginning along the way if that time frame doesn't work for you. And so we're just excited. We'll be starting a group after we come out of November. We'll start a group in January of women for sure. And we'll have some guys groups as well. So just a lot of fun things happening at the Bonhoeffer Project, and God's making a movement, right? There's a discipleship revolution among us. And so I'm excited about that. You're going to begin to see in our columns and our podcasts some guests appear, and you're going to get to hear some voices that maybe you haven't heard before. So I'm excited about what God is doing. He's challenging us to grow and be transformed into the people that he wants us to be. And so we're just excited to be here. Tony, I want to thank you and Joy for coming today. I'm just excited. I'm not going to belabor our stuff. If you guys are watching, listening, and want more information, please feel free to contact us. And there's a ton of information on the website, ton of information that you can get. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
I love what God
you.
is doing in your family and in your heart and in your ministry. So I'm just excited to see how God works in couples as he continues to make the discipleship movement big in our space. So thanks for joining us today, and we hope to see you next month.